Howdy, all of you delicious people. I'm here today to review Euphoria Season 2, Episode 1. So, immediately since I've continued to go on with the show, I think I have to eschew the way of which that I review this. I have to drastically change the grading system. I have to drastically, considering it's a different season, we got to do something different here. And on top of that, like, we also have to mention the most creative thing that they do in this first episode, which is to do this thing called a party. Never heard of this kind of thing in the show. Man, what a drastically different thing to do in the show that I've ever seen them do. Man, if only I could hear the music going on in this episode. Oh, I could. All right, great. So just the slowing down part of the show where it feels like, you know what? If they have a really slowed down scene, I want people to just talk in gibberish anyways. Because really, when it goes down to these scenes anyways, any time of dialogue with these slowed down scenes where it's just kind of like, man, we're getting a good trip here. I feel like the dialogue is to mean nothing, but it seems that the Rue and the Jules interaction actually is to, like, I don't know if that's like a real interaction that both these characters are having, or if it is a real reaction that it's like, okay, so basically what happened towards the end of season 1 was to be a meaningless thing because, like, it kind of feels like everybody in season 2 is having a fresh start, is going on and doing something completely different from season 1, and I was kind of happy about that. I kind of wanted that. I wanted everybody to get like a clean break off of everything and just go on to do something different. A party, not exactly different, but like I wanted them to at least like not go right back to where they were from seasons past, because I just like was thinking like, what more can you do with a story that wasn't all that, like, yeah, to begin with? But we're just going back to certain things. We're just going back to the same well again. But we, of course, in this episode get a backstory, technically for Fezco, Ashtray, and weirdly enough, Fezco's grandmother. I'm like, okay, so I guess if we didn't know who this character was at all in one episode, I'm like, okay, who's getting rubbed down in so and so episode? Well, we get to find out who's getting the rub down upon that other episode. I'm like, oh, okay, all right. So we get to know that character, and like I think there was some cool, interesting things that they did with this backstory compared to a lot of other episodes, or a lot of other backstories, with the exclusion of probably Kat with her weird and goofy thing that she had going on. But I think Fezco's story was probably the more interesting out of everybody, just because like it feels that this backstory was a little bit more like exciting for some odd reason. So there's the upping the ante of this. This feels like a okay episode. To where normally I would really just dwindle this whole down, and I would just be like, man, this show just like, what is this show even? This time around, it's an okay show. There could be an argument to have it be better than okay. It could be almost a good episode, but I don't want to give that too much credit. because there's a lot of downtime also in one episode, and I'm like, why does this have to be an hour in length? And like when you're just kind of really like slowing things down, and we're gonna have to just slow this down, everybody, let's just slow this down. Come on. Why did it have to be the amount of minutes that it had to be when you have these like very slow things going on? What is the point of that? Was there pressure to just like to get this over a certain time period of the season premiere? I'm confused. I don't get that at all. Like there are so many things that you could obviously edited out to get to the 50 some odd minutes. Like obviously there's a ton of scenes in this episode where you could have easily edited them out and butchered them to where they fit the normal X amount of minutes thing, because there were so many things in the show that were kind of a waste. But like I guess the only good thing out of this is what's going on with Cassie, let's just say, in this episode. And that's kind of weird to say. We've kind of turned around on Cassie weirdly, and have it be a character that like I sadly did not want to hear the backstory of, and now I'm just kind of like, okay, if anybody I can root for, it might be Cassie, maybe. And really, what happens to a certain character by the end of this episode, place your bets. Because once we go into spoilers, I'm going to immediately talk about that. So go on and see this episode, come back here. If that's what you want to do, and go on, or you can just kind of hear what I have to say regardless. Because I'm like, yeah, I watched this show a million years ago. Spilled beans. So let's go on. Let's go into that double five time territory. Let's just go into spoilers about this one. So an actually watchable episode for the most point of the show. So let's go on to go into spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about that time I get to spoil this episode. So the beginning of the episode is to gear up for us to understand Grandma Fezco, because she doesn't even have a name in this show. Like IMDb just calls her Grandma. If she actually has a legitimate name, then my bad. But they just call her Grandma in IMDb. So Grandma Fezco is of course to be a drug dealer. What a shocker! I wonder how Fezco was to become a drug dealer. Well, from his grandmother. So it seems that Fezco was to be forced into the lap of his grandmother, because really his dad was not taking care of his son, and so we have it to where the grandmother decided to take Fezco and take care of him. And so we have this drug dealer grandmother who goes and bursts into this club, let's just say, and all of a sudden we have this guy in this back part of this club that is getting his manhood sucked, and and all of a sudden grandma just bursts in, and this woman like pulls off this man, uh and all of a sudden this guy's twig and berries are just like swinging in the wind, and so grandmama goes on and pops this guy in the thighs and then walks away, and I'm like, oh my god. Of course, I guess this guy's name is Polly, that she just bursts in there and just like pops this guy's thighs and then just walks off. So we have this grandma that, of course, at one point is finding a bunch of guys at this bench somewhere, and she's just crowbarring the crap out of them. And Fezco is seeing all this unfold, and rushing off to like try to stop her grandmother from her being in so much rage. And the grandmother goes and accidentally smacks Fezco, where I guess he gets knocked unconscious. And so we have it to where the grandmother never really apologizes for it, but like we have to assume that's to just be a natural, like, well, she's gonna, of course, apologize. So, Ashtray, like, how does he exactly get his origin story? Like, I'm sure there's a lot of effort putting in just really just marinating on this Ashtray character. How, like, I'm sure, like, his parents had this big, lavish story, just like Fezco. We have to showcase how Ashtray just came to be involved in this family. And how do we do that? By just dropping this guy or dropping this kid into the into this house and just saying like, "Oh, hey, yeah, like I've had a bad day." The Fezco's grandmother's like, "Yeah, I had a pretty bad day." And so all of a sudden Fezco is now having to take care of some rando kid which just shows up in a room somewhere, and Fezco's like, well, I guess I'll take care of him. And so the grandma is going on and putting this kid in some bath in this sink, and all of a sudden we have it to where this grandmother who is to have this ashtray with these cigarettes next to this kid in this sink. And so this kid goes and grabs a cigarette and tries to eat it. And so grandma just kind of laughs at that and then just pulls a cigarette from out of this kid's mouth and just calls him Ashtray. And so I guess that's how this kid gets his name. And so they either call him Ashtray or they call him Ash for the rest of the episode. And I'm just like, okay, so that's how the guy got his name. There's nothing more creative than that. All right, great. It is what it is with this show. So, but we go on and we have the grandmother who, of course, is to all of a sudden, like, at some point be ill and she kind of drops. We have Fesco going on and driving his grandmama to this hospital. And I guess that was a mistake because they should have got on and just tried to get the an ambulance to this spot. But Fesco didn't know because he's still really young. And so because the doctor says it's like, well, time is of the essence. So we find out that this woman is to now be like forced to be at home and to be hooked up to these machines. So, like, is she to have a coma? Like, is that what it is? Do I know? Not really. Do they say? I don't think so. Because heaven forbid you say anything in this show. But maybe they will at some point. That would be great. So, no offense to this show. It's just like you say nothing about things that would be the most interesting things to actually say, but then you waste a lot of time saying stuff that doesn't need to be said in this show. That's my biggest problem. So we push on to have Rue, who is to be, of course, driven by Fesco and Ashtray to this location where these guys are to be dealing with Mouse, but now Fezco is to cement that he's going to be the new Mouse because he didn't like how Mouse was going on and doing business. Mouse, the guy that I said before, that was like the tattooed faced guy, and I didn't know what his name is because I couldn't have been bothered to figure that out within this cast list. So we go on into this show, and so all of a sudden we have this girl named Faye who gets into the car with Rue, and Rue is complaining about how she was basically left at this train station. I'm like, didn't technically Rue do the leaving? I think she's seeing that story differently, because Rue was like, you know what, Jules, like, I can't do this. And Jules is just like, well, okay, well, I'm going to get on this train and I'm going to leave. Technically, didn't Rue do the leaving, technically? Because she, like, didn't go with Jules to this location. And Jules is like, well, okay, like, I've already spent this money. I'm going to leave. I don't know. We could. It takes two to figure out that kind of situation. I'm sure it's like, well, no, it's still that Jules left. Well, like, that's because Rue was like, no, like, she was second guessing everything that she was doing. So technically, both these people will be to blame. Let's just say that. Just be secure. But Rue is like, there's certain people that see a story from their perspective, and like, it's kind of funny when you have like three people that have three different stories of the same exact story, and it's like, well, were you even there? Like, yeah, I was there right next to you. It's like, yeah, you didn't see what I saw. that's like God, Knives Out, where you go on and you have like five different people all saying what their actual perspective was for that party, and it was nowhere near what it actually was. So we go on and we have Rue, and so Faye is going on and putting heroin into her own gooch, and so Rue is watching on as this is happening, as Fezco is going on and talking to some guy named, I think it's Custer. Do I even want to even figure this out? I don't really think it matters, because it's not like any of these people are gonna be killed at the end of this show. But anyways, I think it's Custer, but it could be wrong. Anyways, pushing on here. So we go on and have Fezco that's going on and talking with these people, these drug dealers, and so we go on and have a bunch of these people all pulled from this car by, of course, Bowl Cut. These names, I don't even know who these people are. I seen them, but heaven forbid I know what their names are, really. So we have this guy going and telling everybody to strip down because they might be wearing a wire, even Faye. So everybody's supposedly stripping down, even though, of course, out of all the people, we of course have Rue that refuses to strip down. And it's like, well, yeah, like, we have some people that are just like, you don't pay me enough to get freaking on naked on this show. No. You have to figure out some way, writing wise, to come up with this story, to not have, like, because I get it. There's a lot of people that have certain values, and I respect that. And I know I would never go onto a show and be like, yeah, I'm just gonna be like naked and whatever. No, because it's like you would have to want to go on and be like, yeah, I want to have like 6-pack abs and how long do you have to train me for that? A million years? Okay, well then I'm never gonna have my shirt off on a show. I'm never gonna be like half naked in front of anybody. Great. So we go on and we have this guy that's going and wanting to check on wires for everybody, and they're taking forever to take off all their clothes, to the point where now when everybody gets their clothes off, all of a sudden people are just standing around. It's like, dude, just put your clothes back on. But no. So we have Fesco going and talking to, I guess, the leader of all this, who I believe is to be Uh, Lori? Do we have to question that? Because we do. We have this one woman who, of course, have this briefcase full of drugs that is talking to Fezco, and she's asking about Mouse, and Fezco is like, well, Mouse, I didn't like how he was working with me, so you know what, like, I'm gonna go on and say right now that, like, he took him out, and so on and so forth, because we have the scene where Ashtray is kind of running into the room and putting a hammer to Mouse and then putting a hammer to the one guy's nose. So we have, of course, uh, this briefcase full of drugs being given to Fezco. Fezco gives the money. That finishes up that whole scene. So we transfer on to have us realize that there's going to be a New Year's Eve party. So it seems we go on within this story and have Cassie, who's at this convenience store, and all of a sudden Nate is having all these beers in his hand. And so Nate is going and having Cassie and him go to this party. And so since Cassie is telling Nate that she's like not really with Chris, and that Nate is like, well, yeah, like me and Maddie aren't working out. So all of a sudden we go on and have both of them, like Nate's driving to this party and he's just consistently drinking while he's driving. And so Nate is driving faster and faster and faster, having it to where Cassie's all of a sudden uh, taking off her undies and going and having the wind just kind of like breeze through her body. So all of a sudden we go on and have it be that both Natty and or Natty, Nate and Cassie are just kind of doing their thing in this bathroom. And Maddie's knocking on the door, wanting to go to the bathroom, and all of a sudden, Nate's like, "Well, so." Nate is answering the door and he's saying he's going to the bathroom, and so Cassie is just to be in this tub, kind of waiting things out. So Nate all of a sudden is talking with Maddie, wanting to get them both to talk privately, and Maddie has no interest in that. So both Maddie and Travis, which is to be the guy that Maddie is talking to while she's waiting for this bathroom, as Maddie wants to kind of knock the door down, but I don't think she's going to do that. We have both Maddie and Travis that share a thing of weed, and I say that only because Maddie is getting probably secondhand smoke going on in here in this room. So we go on and have both Travis and Maddie kind of exchanging words here. And I guess Maddie's to find out that Travis was, I guess, to be some musician at some point, and she starts like remembering all the stuff that she knows about him. So all of a sudden, after Maddie was to do her business, she tosses this towel and it hits Cassie's face as she's going like, "Oh my god!" And so Travis all of a sudden is to go on after having Cassie's cell phone go off. Travis to realize that somebody is in this tub, and so that pushes both Maddie and Travis to get out of this bathroom to go on a dance. And so all of a sudden we have a new cast member that I have no clue who this guy is. Who, of course, be a guy named Caleb, who is going on and just whipping out everything, let's just say, to take a dump. And so we of course have it where Caleb is telling Cassie, it's like, hey, like, yeah, like, you're a really hot girl, but I gotta take a deuce, so. So Cassie goes on and leaves his bathroom. And so Lexi's like, oh my god, Cassie, you're here. Yeah, because nobody really knew. So we have Fezco and Lexi who are consistently having this conversation, and it feels like Fesco is really hitting on Lexi consistently. Like, man, you're like the greatest girl that I've ever talked to, and oh my god, like you're the greatest girl I ever talked to all year, and so on and so forth. And Fesco's like, hey, what did you do for Christmas? What did you do for New Year's? And I'm like, man, this dialogue, like, at least we like barely get some backstory about Lexi, but man, is this like uh, what is the point of this dialogue? But also, wait a minute, I've figured this out now. Wasn't the end of season one, wasn't that on Halloween? So we've jumped, like, we didn't even get to Thanksgiving in season two. We went straight to New Year's. Like, we basically missed like 2 months. Cause when was the Halloween episode? No, maybe the no, maybe yeah, maybe we didn't have. Cause I was thinking like the Halloween episode was like the end of season one, but no, I think we still had maybe an episode or two after that. I'm not sure. Well, it doesn't matter anyways. So it really doesn't matter. But anyways, so like a month or so has passed, or a couple months, whichever. It doesn't really matter. But anyways, so Fezco is going on and eventually seeing Nate at this party, which ends in Fezco just beating the pulp out of Nate, just punching the crap out of him, because Nate and Fezco are talking, and Nate is like, "Oh, I thought the next time that you saw me, you said that you'd kill me," and Fezco is like, "Well, hey man, it's a new year, and guess what?" He breaks this bottle of alcohol over his head and just pummeling the crap out of him. And I know what a lot of people are thinking. It's like, oh no, Nate's dead. No, he's not dead. Like, we're gonna have it to where he's probably gonna arrest Fezco, or it's probably gonna go on and Nate is gonna like get sympathy from somebody about this. His face will be disfigured. Maybe they have to recast the character. Maybe they'll have a different Nate, where all of a sudden Nate will look completely different than what he had looked before. They're not going to recast Nate. Like, this guy is too much of a villain. Like, I bet, like, he'll go and get, like, beat up and he'll only have, like, one tiny scar somewhere. And, like, that's the nth degree of his battle wounds. We'll figure that. We'll see this out. So, we have Rue that's re-going back into drugs again as she's going and snorting coke, I'm assuming. And so we have Rue that goes back on the mend of doing these things called drugs. And she, of course, does this with this new character called Elliot. And, like, new characters out of nowhere. And so Rue is going on and asking Elliot to go and check her pulse, because Rue is to possibly die at some point, but then her heart keeps beating again, and so she's like, "Oh, there's my heart," and so we have Rue go on and smoke a thing of weed with Elliot, and so we go on and have both Rue and Jules like accidentally stumble into one another at this party, because I guess Jules is going and spending time with Kat, which makes no sense, because I'm like, I'm sorry, how is it all of a sudden we just have Jules and Kat now together? Because that just seems like a random duo of people. but it is what it is with the show. Uh, we also have it where Kat and Ethan are kind of cementing that they love one another. So I guess this relationship is really going well between them two. But you can't really tell that via this episode because how can you really? Because there's not enough time to marinate between these two characters to know anything that's going on between XYZ amount of time of whatever. Like we've never really seen them date or whatever. We're just like we didn't get the first date on camera. We're just kind of seeing them like, yeah, things are working out. Who cares? Like, all right. Is there anything else on besides Kat and Ethan? I guess sadly, until the next episode, we're gonna go and show Ethan's backstory finally after 3 years. So we go on, and so Jules and Rue. We of course have Rue who's just smoking away this thing of weed. And so Jules is going on and saying to Rue, it's like, well, when did you fall off the wagon kind of thing. And so Rue is going on saying, like, hey, it's just smoking weed. And she's like, yeah, so when did you fall off the wagon? So all of a sudden, like, Ashtray was telling Fezco to get the car rolling so Fezco can go on and beat the out of Nate. And so Ashtray is telling Rue, it's like, hey, if you want to leave, like, let's get rolling now. So Rue leaves, gets in the car, but then she comes back to talk to Jules and says that she is to still love her and that it kind of hurt that she left and blah, 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 blah. Out of all the dialogue for this episode, this is the episode that I'm just like, I don't want to see part two of Jules and Rue together. Let's do something different. Either it's Jules and Anna, or it's Rue and Fezco, or something. Let's do something different here for a second season. Like, I feel like these people have gone on to just, like, do the best that they can do, and, like it's either because I just don't get the I just don't get the point of like rehashing something. Like how we had for a number of seasons or whatever, it was like for Friends, like we had the Ross and Rachel relationship thing where everybody's like, oh my god, it's the will they won't they, ah, and it was always like, oh well, will they get together, and oh no, they're on the break, oh no, Ross just slept with somebody, oh my god. And then all of a sudden we basically just killed Ross after both Ross and Rachel broke up. Further and further we made Ross the most annoying character in that show, to where every part of that story I'm just like, this is the least interesting part of that show. So Rue and Jules have become the Ross and Rachel aftermath relationship, where it's just like, I don't want to know anything about them getting back together. I would rather them not, because like have them do something completely different, and then in season 3 have them come back together and have it be a massive surprise. Like both these characters are going on and kind of working on themselves, and like they're thriving because of it. And then season 3, smack them back together. Well, not smack them, but like put them back together gently. Then you could do that. Then I'll be fine. Then I'll be completely won over by that. It just feels like we're just going back to the same old song and dance. Uh, that just is a waste of time. So yeah, so dialogue between Rue and Jules, and then Fezco beats out of Nate, and really that's it. That's all you really need to know. Really, 34 minutes for an hour show. Man, how much time did they just eat up about this one? How much time did they just blow in this show? Uh, oh, Cassie. Cassie, when she is to get to the party, we of course have Chris, who shows up at this party, going on and wanting to talk to Cassie, because of course, right after her whole uh, abortion thing, we have it where Cassie just no longer wants to be with Chris anymore. And I think Cassie just coming up with some kind of reason to break up with Chris. Like just saying that she's not a good person and this and that. Like I think she just like she really should have just been straight up and just said like, well, because you didn't want a child and I did, like that was the differences that we had together. And but I guess Cassie didn't want the child because Chris wasn't ready, and Cassie probably was thinking it's like, well, maybe I'm not ready either. So maybe Cassie not being ready for a child was to also tell her that Cassie isn't ready to be with Chris anymore. That's the weird ready and whatever. So we have it to where they break up and Chris is to like kind of walk away like a wounded animal, sadly, because he technically is. So we'll kind of see where Chris's path is just gonna go on to. When is he gonna explode? Anytime soon? Just for us to have something to do in the show, sadly enough. So we go on, we have Nate, who of course is like, yeah, I just banged your woman. And so we have Nate who is just like getting so freaking in Chris's face and just like Nate is just going on and just like, yeah, like did you go and did you sleep with her? Did you? Like what did you do? Like tell me exactly. Tell me how you did, how you had one last hurrah with Cassie. Tell me. Like what where'd you go and spill your man juices? Tell me exactly where. Was it in her belly button? Was it on her feet? Tell me exactly. And Chris is just like, get away from me. Like you're almost like inside my brain with how close you are. Like get away. And so Nate's like, oh, all right, all right, all right. So he like just walks off, like because Nate is just so ridiculously close, and I'm like, man, like are we just completely forgetting about the whole social distance thing, and we're just like right into somebody's like like we're basically like having one person be inside someone else's head, literally, in the show. It is what it is. But so yeah, so that's basically it. But that's kind of it's really interesting how we have kind of Nate feeling like he is at some kind of high, and then we bring him back down and get him like beaten to death. But we did nothing from what happened to Nate at the end of season one. So, like, he just hulked out at the end of season one and just bashed all this room, and nobody did anything. Nobody's like, hey, maybe we should go on and like have him take therapy or whatever. No, I guess we just had him hulk out and have him just be upset and did nothing. Or really, we could have had just Nate just slowly but surely just freaking just continue to just Hulk out through every single episode. Because it feels like we have technically that character here that is to just like completely just like kind of be numbed out, possibly at some points. So, anyways, with that said, because maybe Nate is just kind of really living for the moment instead of living for like tomorrow. He's just like, hey man, let's just do whatever right now, because who cares? Let's see how far we can just push this. Because Nate has gone on to consistently be successful at like just pushing things and see where it goes. So with that said, I'm gonna push my way out of here. Bye everybody. Bye everybody.